And one thing that I want to highlight here is the application tracking system, or ATS. Many Ontario colleges and universities use ATS, and these are basically like HR platforms like Workday, Talio, Bumble HR. And so these ATS, they are used to parse and rank applications. So what it means is that your resume can get buried if it doesn't have the right keywords and qualifications. So make sure that you mirror the language of the job posting in your cover letter and resume. And the goal here is to naturally weave the exact phrases from the job posting throughout your documents, right? Especially the repeated or required skills. So aim for each key phrase to be repeated at least a few times across your cover letter and resume, but don't overdo it, because modern ATS and human readers, they flag unnatural repetition, right? So you don't want that either. Now remember, hiring managers will spend very little time reviewing your resume and cover letter, like at the first round. So for resumes, we have an estimate of 7 to 10 seconds. So hiring managers will spend 7 to 10 seconds looking at your resume at the first pass. And for the cover letter, again, 30 to 100 seconds. So you really need to make every second count, right? Now, let's talk a bit more about cover letters. Cover letters are still very much alive in academic hiring, especially Ontario colleges, universities. They are required in virtually 100% of the EAP and ESL postings. And they're also read carefully for teaching philosophy, EDI, and mainly program fit. So fit is a very important part of what you should be working on when writing your resume and cover letter. So let's look at some general requirements for a focused cover letter. First, for your introduction, clearly state the exact position title and why the institution and the program excites you, right? Also, very important, summarize your strongest qualification upfront. So, for example, you are no-CELT certified EAP instructor with over 10 years of experience delivering credit and non-credit courses at 3 Ontario colleges, right? Now, your teaching philosophy or your teaching approach. This is almost always required, either explicitly or implicitly. Some job postings will require a separate teaching philosophy statement, while others will expect it like in your cover letter, for example, implicitly there. And what is important to remember here is that you should always connect it to the specific program and the student population of the program you're applying for, right? Now, for your relevant experience, you should directly address the required and the preferred qualifications from the job posting. And again, give concrete examples, right? We just talked about one. You need to talk about how many years of experience, which levels you have taught, what specific programs or courses you have taught. So be as specific as possible. Now, for your relevant skills, again, ensure that you explicitly list what they are asking for in the job posting. And of course, any other relevant skills you have, for example, LMS skills like Blackboard or Brightspace, or maybe test prep skills or any other skills you might have. Also, very important here, EDI should be highlighted. For instance, if you have experience or skills like how you have adapted materials for neurodiverse learners, or how you have incorporated Indigenous perspectives into academic courses or academic units, right? So this is something you should be highlighting. And finally, so when closing, restate your enthusiasm and your fit. Mention your availability for an interview and thank the hiring manager and provide your contact information. Okay. Now, next, we are going to look at some tips for cover letters. And again, I can't emphasize enough. Ensure you mirror the job posting's exact language and requirements. And also address every required qualification explicitly in your cover letter and in your resume. That's very important. And also remember, AI tools are very helpful for structure, but always rewrite it in your own voice. AI generated cover letters are instantly recognizable, as anyone who is a teacher, instructor, professor here actually knows, right? So they are generic, like they use generic phrasing. Sometimes they have like perfect but lifeless prose. You see the repetitive sentence structure. So hiring managers frequently spot and reject these cover letters right away. So if you use AI, use it for outlining, brainstorming, raw input, but then personalize heavily with real examples and enthusiasm, right? Bring your voice into the document you're writing. And lastly, remember, you need to be concise but specific. You quantify and you are detailed wherever you can do. You make sure you do that. Now, next, a common question when you are applying for a job in higher education is, should I submit a resume or a CV? And the answer is always check the job posting first. Why? Because, using the wrong format is an instant red flag for many hiring managers and committees, right? So what we can say is that overall, we can say that EAP and ESL roles at colleges, Ontario colleges, they typically require a resume and a cover letter, while at universities, it will depend on the unit the EAP ESL roles are housed in. For example, EAP and ESL positions housed in faculties or academic units, they may request an academic CV and a teaching dossier. However, positions housed in continuing ed or English language institutes, they often require a resume and a cover letter, right? So now I'll pass it on to Bill so he can focus a bit more on CVs.
Thanks so much, Danielle. And yeah, thank you for everybody for attending today. It's great to see a large group of attendees. And I'm looking forward to our opportunity to have some discussion at the end of this presentation. I'm going to talk about my experience. I've been in this field for over 2 decades, but I've been reviewing applications. I've done the reviewing of the applications, the interviewing, and the hiring of probably over several hundred applications over the past 20 years. So I have a lot of experience doing this, and as well, I appreciate this is a sensitive topic right now in our industry. I don't need to go into further detail, I think, about that, but I know that this is a very concerning time in our industry. So I appreciate that, and perhaps a timely topic for everybody to be talking about these things. So um, one thing I'll say about the curriculum vitae or the CV is that I think they're often confused, the two terms resume and CV. So you should also just be aware of that sometimes employers use the two words interchangeably and don't necessarily differentiate between the two. But I'll go from what our understanding of what a CV tends to be. It's typically a more complete academic record. There's no set limit in terms of number of pages. You could have things like your teaching history, you could have research included, publications, and so on. They're typically for more academic, higher roles like professor roles, and oftentimes I see them for international jobs that are posted. When I look at the jobs that are posted on TESOL Ontario or TESOL Canada or within Canada in the EAP field, it typically is a resume. Yeah, the next slide, please. So I'll talk a bit about the resume. A lot of what I say here about the resume also can be applied to the CV. So it's except for the things I just said about the length. But in terms of the purpose, you want to have a targeted summary at the beginning. It's very helpful to have that about your employment history, your skills and experience. There is examples of that, and I have a link in this presentation to some example resumes where they have some examples of a shortened summary. They're typically about 2 pages, 3 pages at most in terms of the content. I think most of you probably know this. It's typically chronological for experience, but if you're just starting out, then you would make it a functional resume. And like I said, it's oftentimes for the Ontario public colleges, universities is when you would use this. And again, like Danielle said, be aware of the application tracking systems. Make sure that you avoid things like tables and columns because the readers will not read those very well. Make sure that you use a consistent font. Um, yeah, so I think you just need to be aware of that. And like, I just want to reemphasize what Danielle said about mirroring the job posting. Make sure you mirror the keywords that are in the job posting. If it says specific skills that you need, specific um, certifications that you need, make sure you put that in your resume and your cover letter. Okay, so in terms of what's in the resume, I think most of you probably know this. You need to have your contact information, your full name, your email address, cell phone number. Make sure if you put your cell phone number, be prepared for a phone call. That's important too. So don't be blocking unknown callers at that time, and be aware you might be getting a call. Um, like I said, a professional summary or objective, your education certifications, make sure you have that, the institution name, the degree that you earned, the year. You can leave the year out if you're concerned about ageism, and that does exist in every industry. And your teaching position, the name of the position, the years worked, again, listed in reverse chronological order. I wouldn't go back more than, say, 2 decades. You could even do fewer years than that, depending on your history and what you want to highlight for that particular position. Next slide, please. You can have a section for skills and achievements. So make sure that you're listing both your hard skills, like you worked on an LMS, a certain LMS, mention that because maybe you need to use a certain LMS in your job, and your soft skills. So teamwork and leadership and communication skills and so on. And then any achievements such as awards or if you published or you presented at a conference, those are important things. And those are two example bullets there that you can read. I think most of you are familiar with the format. You need to have an active verb and a sentence. It's important if you can to include details. So if you worked with a number of students, how many students did you work with over how many years? What were the outcomes? So in this example here, the students achieved one letter grade band improvement. So that sort of thing is really important to mention. Okay, next slide, please. And then just back to CVs again, just mentioning these are some of the core components. So you need to have a teaching statement and your evidence of effectiveness. So if you have student peer feedback, you can get that, include that in your CV. Um, any feedback that you got that you gave to students on assignments, that would be helpful as well. Your syllabi, assignments, rubrics, anything that you can have, any artifacts of your teaching experience and any evidence of your leadership and your development as well. And then there's an example of a teaching statement that it could be, that you could use as an example. But as I said, this is something you could put at the top of a resume as well. Back to Danielle's point about using AI, do be aware of it, the risks, but AI can be good at taking your information. If you're willing to put your resume and share it with an AI tool, it can be good at taking it and summarizing your particular resume and your skills. So it could actually do a good job of that. You'd obviously want to go in and check to make sure it's accurate before you put that on your CV or your resume. Okay, next. And then finally, I just want to mention some tips again, just based on my experience. So again, I can't emphasize enough how important it is to make sure you mirror those keywords. So I reviewed a job this recently, and I had something like 75 applications for a position. And of those applications, I think less than a handful actually, like, probably less than a half dozen, actually mentioned some of the key requirements of the job. So if it said you needed to have an OSELT for the position, very, very few of the applicants actually put that in their resume or their cover letter. And so do make sure if it says you need certain requirements or skills, do make sure you put that in, obviously if you have them. I highly recommend using a template. Microsoft Word or Apple's Pages or even Google Docs have resume templates that you can use. So I highly recommend you use those. Obviously, use the built-in grammar and spell checker that are there in those word processing software. It would be silly not to pay attention to words that are underlined and highlighted. So you've got to make sure that you don't have any of those, and have it reread by a friend if you can. Um, Pay attention to the application procedures, the file format using MS Word or PDF. I should just go back up, yeah, to that point. Do consider using Gen AI if you're willing to share that with that tool. You can get some very useful feedback. As well, there are websites like, I'll just throw a name out there, but I know like Indeed, for example, if you are signed up with them, you may be able to get some feedback on your resume. It might be free, or you may have to pay a small fee, but that might be effective as well. Certainly asking a colleague to review it. And then just avoid acronyms. Spell out terms like TESOL at least once. And then start each bullet with a strong verb like developed or led or facilitated. And then finally, just keep your descriptions concise and achievement focused.